Welcome learner to our lecture 10, that is the various method of estimating demand forecasting. So today we will study the various methods of demand forecasting. Here you have already know that the demand forecasting estimating future demand for a product or services so that business can be run, and basically it can be planned production, inventory and sales strategy. So here in various method we can see the qualitative and quantitative data methods. Let's see one by one. Okay, then before going to the next slide, let's first learn the learning objective of demand forecasting, that what you have to learn in this chapter. First you have to learn the demand forecasting, its importance, and you have to also learn different methods that has been used in forecast demand, and also learn apply demand forecasting techniques accurately, evaluates the strength and weakness of each method, that is a qualitative and quantitative method, and also improve production planning and inventory management. Let's see the next slide one by one. Now, let's see the introduction of demand forecasting, their meaning. So here you have seen that a demand forecasting are the techniques used by business to estimate future demand for the product or services. So these methods helps organization to make better decision regarding production, marketing and investment. Basically, I have already told you that the demand forecasting mainly divided in two categories. That is the qualitative method. In qualitative method, it is based on opinions, judgment, and survey, and it is also called as simple survey method. For example, like expert opinion and all that. Okay, the next one is complex statistical method, which is based on quantitative method. In this method, we can use the statistical analysis and mathematical tools like the t-test, f-test. All tests have been used in complex statistical method, which is called as quantitative method. Now, let's talk about the simple survey method, which is called as qualitative method. In this method, it is basically based on opinion, judgment, and experience rather than mathematical calculation. You have already seen that when we talk about the expert opinion, when we study the behavior and all these things, these methods have been used. It comes under the qualitative method. So here we can say that historical data is limited or unavailable, such we can launching new products or entering new market. So these methods used to collect the information from experts, consumer and market participant. So let's see the qualitative method including under this simple survey method. Now, let's see the expert opinion poll method, which comes under the qualitative methods. In this method, involves opinions from expert, manager, industries expert, consultant. These already have shown this, that these experts may include business executive, market analyst, or industry specialist and sales manager. So here experts analyze trends and gives forecast. For example, we can say that company asking senior manager about future sales. So let's see what are the advantage of this expert opinion method. It is quick and easy method and useful for new product, but its disadvantages may be biased due to personal judgment, and accuracy depends upon expertise of the expert. So this is the expert opinion method, in which the expert analyzes the trends and gives the forecast from their experience. This is called the expert opinion poll. Now, let's talk about the second method, that is the Delphi technique. So here, as you know very well, that you have a limited or unavailable data in qualitative method. Before launching to a new product or new market, expert advice is very important. So it is a systematic method of collecting forecast from a group of experts through a multiple round of questionnaire to reach a common agreement. So here there are some key features of this Delphi method, that experts do not meet face to face. Opinion are anonymous, conducted in several rounds. Here, feedback is provided after each round, and the final result is based on common agreement. So, some process in Delphi method. Let's see one by one. Selection of expert. So here, choose experienced people from relevant field and forecast independently. Then responses are collected and summarized. Here, summary is shared anonymously with the expert, and expert revise their opinions based on their feedback. So this process continue until a common agreement is reached. There are some advantage and disadvantage of every technique or every method. So here we can say that the advantage is it reduces personal bias, no influence of dominant individuals, more reliable than simple opinion method, and it is used for long term forecasting. And what are disadvantage? It is a time consuming process, required skill coordination, depend on quality of expert, and can be costly. Okay, the question arises when to use this method. This method basically used in new product forecasting. No historical data is available. Long time planning and complex or uncertain market condition. So this is a systematic and reliable forecasting technique that uses expert judgment and repeated feedback to arrive at accurate demand prediction, especially when data is limited. Now, the next method is consumer survey method, or we can say that complete enumeration method. So here in this method, qualitative forecasting technique in which a company directly asks consumer about their future buying intentions to estimate demand. Let's read it once. In this method, the firm collect information from every potential consumer in the target market. So here, the company asks consumer about their buying intentions, quantity they expect to purchase, preferred product feature, and expected future demand. So here in this method, complete enumeration method and sample survey method in which only a few consumers are selected. Two methods have been used in consumer survey method. Let's start talk about the complete enumeration method. In this method, this is also called a census method, involves collecting information from every single consumer in the target market. So, what are the steps? Firstly, identify total number of consumer in the market, and they prepare questionnaire, and after that they contact each and every customer and about their to collect their responses and analyze data to forecast demand. For example, we have seen that a company wants to launch a new product may contact all potential customers to ask whether they will purchase the product or not. So let's take one example. A company wants to launch a product in a small village. So what they do survey all household in the village and ask about their need and purchasing capacity, and also uses responses to estimate demand. And see what are the advantage of this method. The advantage of this method that it is highly accurate because it includes all consumer, and it's provide direct information about the demand. So here there's also one advantage that there is a no sampling error in this method. And what are disadvantage? It's very expensive, very time consuming, difficult for the large population, and require more manpower. The next method is end or user method of consumer survey. In this method, business estimate demand by studying the demand of different industry that use the product. So this method is commonly used for industrial goods. So let's take one example for demand for steel industry, which can be estimated by studying the demand in the industry such as construction, automobile, and engineering industries. So this end user method basically what they do, they take the study or demand forecast of different industry that use the product to launch a new product in the market or for the production capacity. And what are the advantage of this method? The advantage of this method that it helps estimate demand more accurately for industrial product, and it is used for long term forecast. but the limitations has been always in there that data collection can be complicated, and it required detailed industry in the demand forecasting. Now, let's talk about the consumer survey method of sample survey method that we have been observed in the earlier slide. As you know, in the complete enumeration method, we can study all the consumer, but in sample survey method, we can survey the entire population, but the sample size is selected or limited. We cannot include the whole market. So here, we can characterize the entire population. For example, a company may survey 500 consumers from different regions to estimate demand for a product. So here you can say that the accuracy is not as much as you want. So here sampling error may also be arise due to the limited population or limited survey. The next method is complex statistical method, which comes under the quantitative methods. In this method, we can use the mathematical models, statistical technique, that is the T test, F test, and all other tests, and also use the historical data to forecast the demand. This is also maybe called as the accurate demand forecast by using the statistical technique. So we can say that these method are more scientific and accurate because they rely on numerical analysis. Let's see the complex statistical method one by one from the next. The first quantitative method is time series analysis. In this analysis, we can study the past data over different time periods to predict the future demand. So here we can use the past data to use to find out the present and future demand for goods and services. So let's see what are the main components of time series analysis. The first one is trend. For finding long-term investment or long-term movement for demand forecast, we can use the trend. By using the trend, we have seen the long-term movement in the demand for goods. The next one is seasonal variation. In this, regular changes due to season. The next one is cyclical variation. In this time series, changes related to economic cycle like recession, depression, and peak. The next one is irregulation variation, which is unpredictable changes like earthquake and all that. Let's take the one example of time series analysis. For example, ice cream sales increasing due to in summer and decrease in winter. We can say that ice cream sales have been increases in summer and reduces in winter. So the advantage of this time series analysis data is it uses historical data and it's helpful in identifying pattern. What are the limitations comes under this? The limitation is it cannot predict sudden market changes and it requires reliable past data. Now, let's talk about the second method, that is the barometric technique. This is again a quantitative method. In this method, demand forecasting that uses economic indicators like signals of economic changes to predicting future demand trends. So here, just like a barometric predicts weather, this method predict business condition. So there are three indicators of these barometric techniques. The first one is leading indicators. In leading indicators, these changes before economic changes occur. It shows future change before they happen, and it is used to predict upcoming demand. For example, new order, stock market trends, business investments. So if these increases, future demand likely to increase. This is the leading indicator. The second one is lagging indicator. Lagging indicator is these changes after economic changes occur. So here changes after the economic changes, it confirm past trends. For example, employment rate, corporate profit, interest rate, and etc. The last one is coincident indicators. So here these changes at the same time as economic changes, as you know, move along with the economic, and it shows current business condition. For example, industrial production, national income. So, what steps has been to follow in barometric techniques? First, we have to identify economic indicators, which indicators leading, lagging, or coincident, classifying them, then collect the data, analyzing trends and relationship, and forecast future demand. So, for example, let's take one example of coincident indicator. Let's take rising income level. And let's take one example of leading indicator increasing car booking. So it predicts higher demand for cars in future. And what are the advantage? The advantage is useful for predicting turning point, boom or recession, helps in long-term planning, and it is based on economic data. So there are advantage and disadvantage will always occur. Indicators may not allow to be accurate, required expert analysis, complex to understand, and data may be delayed. The next method is correlation and regression analysis. These again are quantitative method used to study relationship between the variables and predicting demand. So, what are the factor affecting demand? It may include price, income, population, advertising, and consumer preference. Let's see first what is correlation. So here correlation measure the degree of relationship between the two variable, or it defines directs the relationship between two variables, that is the price and demand, income and demand. There are various types of correlation, that is the positive, negative and zero. Now let's see what is regression. Here, regression analysis is used to predict one variable that is dependent based on another variable that is independent. So we can say that demand depend on price, income and advertising. So in this, it analyzes predicts demand by developing mathematical equation that describe the relationship between the variable. So there are two types of regression method, that is a simple and multiple regression. So what are the advantage of this? The advantage of regression is it shows the cause effect relationship, and it is useful for forecasting demand, and it gives the more accurate result than a correlation. Again, there are some disadvantage of this. It requires statistical knowledge. So if you know the regression, then only you find the regression analysis technique. It depends on data quality, and it assumes the relationship is stable. The next method is simultaneous equation method. In simultaneous equation method is a forecasting technique in which two or more equations are solved together to determine the relationship between the variables like demand, supply, price, and income. So in this method uses multiple equation to represent relationship between the several economic variables. So here we can say that demand is affected by many factors such as price, income, production, and supply. So these relationships are represented through a system of equations that are solved together. It may be called as simultaneous equation method. As you know, in real market, variables are interdependent. For example, demand depends on price and price depends on supply and demand. So we solve equations simultaneously together. So let's take the advantage of this simultaneous method. What are the advantage? This method is realistic. Why? It considers interdependence. It is scientifically accurate and useful for complex economic models, or useful for large scale economic forecasting. And again, there are some limitations in there. It is complex and difficult. It requires statistical and mathematical knowledge, needs large amount of data. So that we can say that simultaneous method is an advanced forecasting technique that helps determine equilibrium demand and prices by solving multiple related equations together. So it is widely used in economic analysis and demand forecasting. Now let's conclude this various steps of demand forecasting, you have seen that we have seen the various demand forecasting method that comes under the qualitative and quantitative method, and these methods helps business estimate for future demand and make better decision. So here we can already study the qualitative method, which is rely on expert opinions and consumer survey, and we can also study the quantitative method, which is rely to use statistical method and mathematical technique. So by using appropriating forecast method, we can see that company can plan production. It also reduces risk. So this production can be allocate resource efficiently and it achieve long-term growth. Thank you so much, learners, for listening me. In the next lecture, we will study the importance, essential factor affecting and limitations of demand forecasting.